Hi everyone, today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this interactive scrapbook where you can draw and you can also, I don't know why I'm taking so long, but you can also move the pages. Whoa, it's an actual interactive scrapbook. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to my tutorial. So recently been feeling very inspired by these scrapbook-esque designs that have been all over my Pinterest, and I really like how physical media is making a comeback through a digital way, and I kind of wanted to explore something like this through a very technical tool like TouchDesigner. So let's get started. Wait, before we get started, this is my name, this is why I'm doing this, and this is what I call this project. I forgot to say all this before. Thanks. Okay, so here we are in my network, and this is kind of how I created the book. So let's start from scratch. Oh my god, it's gone. Okay, so the first step we need to do is make our interactive drawing tool, which we use in the scrapbook. So I'm going to do that by adding Torin Blankensmith's MediaPipe plugin. If you are not aware of it, it's available for free on his page. I'll link it down below. And we're also going to be using his hand tracking talks, which is also available. I'll link it below in the description. So when you first open your media tracking, when you first open your MediaPipe, this is what it should look like, all these overlays. And so you have to make sure that all of them are off, except for hands, because that's the only one we'll be using at the moment. And if you keep all of these on, it takes up a lot of power, so we don't need that. And you should then see something like this where it's detecting your hand. And also turn off overlays, because that does take up insignificant amount of power. Okay, and then we're gonna go to connect this to our hand tracking. Before I get into the network, one thing I forgot to mention is that when you save your files, wherever you save them, so for instance, in my folder, I have this file saved in this folder. So I have the Torin's Toxis folder in the same file. If your Toxis folder, which has your MediaPipe and your hand tracking, if it is not in the same folder, then you might your TouchDesigner network might not work. So just keep that in mind before starting this. Anyway, back to this. So now we're going to if we look at the outputs of each of the MediaPipe, like each of these outputs, then you can see that they each have their own thing. So there's a face landmark, hands, that's what we want, and then there's a bunch of other ones too if you want to experiment further after this tutorial. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go with hands, and we're going to connect that to our hand tracking, and then you'll be able to see your hand overlay in the hand tracking little viewer. Okay, and now we need to basically once we have our hand tracking working, this error is sometimes stays, but it'll go away after a while. We next need to take out our it's gone. We need to take out a null to basically capture this data that we're seeing here. So we'll go for the second one, which is normalized data, and we're gonna now when you've connected this null and you see my hand comes up, there's going to be a bunch of data here. And if we zoom in further, this is my left hand, but there's all these channels, and then we basically need the index finger to draw, so we're going to connect that channel. And the way we're going to do that is, first we want to select just that single channel, so we're going to put in a select job, and then we can select the names from here. You could also drag and drop, but there's too many there. And we're going to select H1 index fingertip. Now the interesting thing about this is that you need all three like points X, Y, and Z for the drawing. I just found that it works better that way. I'm not sure why the Z is needed, but not just the X, because you're you're going to map it onto the x and y coordinates. So a smart way to do this is you delete the x and you add a star, and now you see that all three of those index fingertip points are there. So that's our second step of this done, which is the select job. And now we're going to basically map these onto our feedback loop, which is going to create our drawing thing. So I'm just going to finish this off with a null again, and we'll map our data on from this. Moving on somewhere a little further in the network, I want you to open up a circle top. And I want you to connect it to this component in the image filters portion. It's basically the feedback component, and I want you to bring it out into your network. Once you have this, I want you to connect your circle top to it, and now this is basically what's going to create our brush, our pencil, whatever we used to draw. I'm going to kind of bring the radius down to 0.1, just because I want the drawing, like the style of drawing in the scrapbook, to be very thin. I want it to feel like a pencil, but if you are into the thicker like paint sort of thing, you can try that. And also one more thing to remember is that we should always, whenever we put in a new top and it's the first frame, you should convert it to parent panel size and the pixel format, whatever you prefer, but parent panel size is super important, because then it like kind of molds it according to your whole project, which will be seeing on the performance viewer. So now that we have our feedback loop kind of done, I want to map it like I said before. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna turn this into active mode, and we're gonna map the x and the y of the index fingertip to the center of the circle. So let's take the x and map it to the x and do chop reference, and do the same for y and map it to y, chop reference. And now when you see, one more thing, I want the opacity of the feedback to be 1. Otherwise it comes off as very watercolor like, and that's not what we want. I want it to be very hard, crisp, like a pencil, you know. Again, if that's not the look you're going for, then feel free to change this. So now, as you can see, as I'm drawing, our feedback loop is complete, and it's not perfect. So this is why, because you can see it's like the distance is not great, it's still glitching out. So this is because our feedback, this is because our range is not correct. So if you see here, if we zoom in a little further, it goes up to, if you look at the index fingertip x, which is our major focus here, it goes up to almost 0.6, a bit above that, sometimes 0.7, but not more. And our original range is 0 to 1. So I'm just going to include a math chop inside this. And we're going to go to range, and we're going to change the range from 0 to 1 to minus 0.5 to 0.05. This was with a lot of trial and error, and I found it to work for me, but it's just something you have to figure out by seeing how the distance is looking on your screen with your feedback. And now if it's a little better. Yep, it's drawing more smoothly, as you can see. Okay, so that's basically our brushwork done. Let's now move on to, and one more thing. So also you need to basically, if you see this drawing, the problem with this is that there's once you've scribbled all over, like there's no way to gain the canvas again. So how will the person interacting with the scrapbook erase it? And so to erase it, we're gonna have to again put in another gesture or map it to something else so that we can erase it. And I found the best way to do that to be through a thumbs up. and I'll map it similarly here for you now. So there's a lot of data, as I said before, in these doxes that Torin has built for us. So there's if you go into the hand tracking, that has a lot of different types of data. So this is our normalized data, which is all the hand data you saw. Then there's instance data, helpers, and gestures, and hand 1 and hand 2. So I found one of the gestures to be pretty useful, which was the thumbs up gesture. And we're going to take out another null from there just to show you. So these are the gestures that are already there, and they're already mapped pretty well. This is the thumbs up, this is the pointing up, this is the open palm. So they work out nicely. So we're going to take again select chop, because we just want our thumbs up. And also the reason I picked a gesture is because for the erase method you want something that is 0 to 1 directly, and not something that's like a midpoint that can be grown and shrunk. We need something instant, so that's why thumbs up was helpful. And then we're going to now we've selected it, and we can go back to our null, and we're gonna basically map this onto the reset of the feedback, which is what essentially causes it to erase. Job reference. So now hopefully, oops, okay, wait, right. So similarly, what I've done here to create that erase feature is we took one of the gestures from Torin's, again, hand tracking, and which is the thumbs up, and we selected it in the same way I showed you above. It's pretty good. And we then mapped it onto the reset of the feedback. So if you click feedback here, here's the reset. We basically turn this onto active mode, and we reset it, and we put it to chop reference. And then what you basically see is, now after I'm done drawing, I can do this and my canvas will be back to new. So that's the first part of the scrapbook. Now let's get into making the book itself. So for our second part, we're going to now learn to create the actual book. As you can see, here is the network that we created previously, and now we're going to move on to creating that surface where we can draw and all of that. So we're going to start with a SOP and a grid SOP. And then we're going to set some parameters for the grid. So we're going to transform it actually. So the reason we're going to, so first to size it, I'm going to size it 1 by 1.2, just because I wanted to mimic the feeling of an A4 paper, because I was trying to create like something that's like feels physical, but you can choose any size you want. And then we're going to go on to transforming, and the reason we're doing that is if you look at the axes currently in the geometry viewer, the axes are right in the center, and that isn't actually helpful to us, because we want the paper that we're creating is going to bend on that axis. So that's essentially what we're creating with the axis is the spine. So we want the spine to be at the edge, so that when it bends or folds, it's folding on that spine. So how we're going to do that is we're going to then translate this by minus 0.5, and now you can see that that edge has been created. And then we're gonna add a twist SOP, and this is what's going to help us create that bending feeling. So if you look at your options, you're going to have twist and you're going to have a bunch of others. We're going to click bend, and we're going to switch up these axes to give it the feeling, because currently it's not bending the right way. That's not what we want. So we're going to make this, if I remember correctly, okay, so basically you have to have your z-axis as your primary axis and your secondary axis as your x-axis, and then when you move the strength, you'll see that it's actually really bending like a page. And then the roll off is something we'll use later to when we actually map this to make it interactive, but the roll off is what gives it that so if I have the strength here, and the roll off is actually what makes it flip, so we're going to be using that later. So now that you have this, essentially is what you need for the whole book. It's just this. So if you want, this is one page. Your book can have multiple pages. I had 2 in my own book, but for the purpose of interactivity, like, it only makes sense to have less, because you can only interact with so many things at once. So let's just duplicate this twice. And there's our second page. You don't need to change the axis, because when it flips in the same direction. And we're going to merge all this together, so it's going to make more sense to you. But now our book we have our 2 flipping pages, but it needs something to lay on to complete that feeling of it feeling like a book. And that's going to be done with 2 grids that are just one on the right and one on the left. However, I think it would be easier to just use tops, but that's how I did it, so let's do it that way. Or actually, let's just copy, so the size is the same, and we're gonna transform this one too, and we're gonna make it minus 0.5. So one of them will have the same axis as we transformed as before, which is it will be on the left, but the new one, which is going to be the opposite page, is going to be on the right side. So we have to flip the transform, and now it's gonna, oh, I did it on the actual grid itself, sorry. And now it's gonna be on the side. So we have our bottom 2 pages, and we have 2 flipping pages on top, and that's essentially our book. And the way to merge these is basically using something called the merge swap. So where did it go? Hello. And it's kind of like composite in tops, interestingly. And there you have it. There's our book. And if we adjust the strength on any of the pages for the twist, it will really seem like it's being lifted. But obviously that effect will be reached when we connect interactivity in our next step. So one thing to note that I forgot in the last part is that you should put a null at the end of each of these and then merge it, just for ease of workflow. And secondly, when we are working with SOPs, it's smarter to turn the viewer off, because your laptop will run better on that, and you don't need to see all of them. You just need to see the final thing. So I'm going to turn these off for now. I'm also going to be adding nulls to each of them. Just a sec. Okay, there we have it. So now we have to add interactivity to our book, essentially to make the pages kind of bend through our gestures, and we also connect our drawing to on top of the book. So the way I'm going to do that is we're going to go back to the MediaPipe we used earlier, and I'm going to use the data from that and map it the same way we did for the drawing onto the parts of the book that are bending. So yeah, we're going to go back to our hand tracking, and now we're going to use one of the areas which is defined as helpers. It's a third output, so I want you to take that. Let's bring this here. Oops. Hello. Okay, so I want you to take the helper data, and I want you to make a null from it so we can see those channels that we need. And now we see all of these other channels that were not present in the first set. So here what we're gonna need is the midpoint. I found the easiest to map the turning pages onto that, because for the page turning I needed because for the page turning I needed something which you could control. Because for the page turning I needed something which you could kind of increase and decrease, and all the other gestures seem to be very 0 to 1, but this was the only one which was you could variate. So I picked this one because if it's just 1, the page doesn't turn fully, so that's why we're mapping this one onto the book. So we're again gonna do the same thing that we did before. So we're gonna take our select chop, and then we're gonna choose our H2 midpoint. And the reason we're gonna do H2 and not H1 is because H1 is going to be used to draw, so it makes more sense to put H2. I found that when I put H1, the system gets confused and drawing doesn't work properly, neither does the page turning. So make sure to keep them, whatever functions you do, on different hands. So we're going to keep H2 midpoint distance, and then we're going to null this out again. We will probably need a math job to fix it, but just to test it out before that, we're going to null this out, and then we're going to put in active mode, and we are going to drop it onto our twists, which is where this was working. So make sure your twist strengths are at 26 wherever we've applied them, because otherwise the roll off that we're mapping onto, it will not have the desired effect. So we have this on active mode, and then we're going to apply it to we're going to apply it to the first twist of the first page, and I'm going to map it onto roll off, and similarly I'm going to do that to the second, and I'm going to do the same thing. So having 2 pages worked when I could use both my hands, but then I ended up adding drawing, and it kind of, the second page is useless, but like if maybe through a slider you can also animate the second page, that would be cool. It's just nice to have it, feels more like a book. And now hopefully this will work. Whoa. Yeah, and now hopefully this will work. But basically, because it's H2, make sure you have one hand out so it knows that this is H1, and then bring your second hand out, and you'll begin to see that it's working ever so slightly. So this means that we need to adjust our range, because like I said, we had to bring in the math job, but we had to see if it was working or not first. So we're gonna see how much our H2 midpoint distance comes out to be, and adjust our math job accordingly. It's going pretty high, so let's adjust the range accordingly. I'm just gonna, oops, it's too close, too much going on. Okay, and we're gonna set it to, I'm gonna make it larger just because that's what worked when I made it the first time, because our page isn't bending enough. So let's see if increasing the range made sense. And we're gonna go back, wait, hand 1 and 2, and yeah, that's pretty good. And then if you look at it from the context of the whole book, it looks like a real book, because you're seeing everything together. Wait, that's great. You can almost reach the end if you go really crazy with your midpoint. So we've made our book interactive. The third thing we have to do now is also how do we include the drawing on the book. So I think first we need to render out this merged geometry, and then we're gonna over our drawing onto the book. So we'll do that in the next step. So the first step to rendering this is to get all the necessary components you need to rendered geometry. So we're gonna connect this to a geo component. Next we're gonna add our light, camera, and all of that stuff. And finally we need our render top, so I'm gonna add that. Whoa, that's crazy. And there we have it, our book is being rendered. Is it still working? Yes, it is. That's so cool. Okay, next we need to do what I promised you, which is to incorporate the drawing onto the book, and then we'll get into some quick changes on how to adjust the colors and add more stuff on top. So let's change the color of our circle, because if it's white we're not going to see it right now on the book. So I'm just going to make it my favorite color, pink, and I'm just checking if that's working. So we're gonna basically, what we're gonna do is use an over top, because now it's, once it's in render, it's a regular top. So we're gonna use an over top to put the feedback over the render. I'm just gonna turn this into a null. And let's create an over top, or comp actually would be better. And we're gonna bring this in, and then we're gonna change, once you've added both of your nodes in from each, the feedback. And so what we basically did is we connected the feedback that we had before, its output, and our render top null, and they're together. And then make sure to change your operation to over. And let's also check if it's working on this so far. Yes. So the circle is much too big. My circle was much smaller. I was just testing it out in this video. Let's now reduce its size much more. I think it's like 0.02 or 0.5 or something. Let's see if this is better. It's still very big. It's kind of better. It's still huge. Okay. That's good. We can make a mini scrapbook for this tutorial. So that's how I got my drawing into the book. It did bleed outside the book. It's just that you couldn't tell because there was so much going on. But I haven't figured out a way to. Oh no, both my hands are coming. I haven't figured out a way to fix that yet. So maybe with a background and an over. But this is this is basically how you bring in the drawing. And now to style the book and whatnot, we are going to change the color of the pages by adding a fong, because in my final result it's yellow, because I wanted to make it yellow. So we're gonna do that here. So if it's gonna be a fong matte, and I'm also gonna add a little noise to this because I did that as well in my final result. But to begin with, first we need to create a null, and we need to map the null onto the geometry material. So now whatever we do to the fong will happen to the book. So and we can turn off our viewers if that will help. But if you choose a color, it's gonna automatically reflect on your geo. And then you can adjust what's happening. And then whatever color you can, firstly you can change the color with the font. If you want to make it super yellow or purple or anything, and then you can adjust the shininess of it and do so much. But I basically, so now using the font you can change the color of the book pages. You can make them something crazy. I want to first do something where I want to add the noise, because it changes the whole texture of the thing and then the color looks different. So let's bring in a noise stop. I always like to adjust my noise stops in a way where they look like grain, so I always take the noise like period down and do a little bit of adjusting, something like that. Maybe the black gets too gray. And then I like to what I basically do is, oh, I forgot something important, the parent panel size. What I basically, first we'll obviously have to have a null, but what we will do is we are going to map the noise onto our mat so that we can use it as our texture for the 3D shape. So when you open this geometry, you're going to have something here called, when you open the font, you're going to have something called a color map. Where is it? Here. And what you can basically do is map your noise onto the color map. So now do you see my book is all grainy, which is what I wanted. And now when you change the color of the font, it's going to look really different because of the texture. It's a lot darker, but I do want the grain, so I'm okay with the darker texture. And we're gonna go with, let's go with purple pages this time. I don't know, what would be cooler? That's too dark. This is weird. It's too green. That's a nice color. And then you can also adjust other things via the font. So I wanted to tone down the shininess because paper isn't that shiny, so you can make it fully matte, but then it doesn't look realistic, so I keep it like somewhere here, I guess, where it's really limited. But see, it started to look like a book already, and that's how it's looking so far with our handwriting. Let's go back. Cool. And then we can flip the pages. Okay, and now coming to the extra elements, let's cover that in the final chapter to the best of our ability. So one final element that I do want to talk about when it comes to the decorations of the scrapbook is a peelable sticker that I added, but I couldn't incorporate it with the hand gesture, so it's peelable by the scrolly tab on TouchDesigner through one of the controls, just as we were moving the strength before. And secondly, I want to teach you how to add like a video overlay on top of this, because that was a part of my scrapbook. The other items were all simply uses of tops and just regular tops and overs, so I can cover that in a different video. But getting to the video, what I did is MediaPipe actually allows you to get a null out of your own video, so that's here. So we're going to null this out. Hello. And now I can see myself, and I basically what I did is added that to the scrapbook by overing it. So we can just add it to the comp. Oh wait, right, we have to this isn't working out, so we have to fit I think we have to use a fit to fix it and then put it on top of the scrapbook, and in the composite we can adjust the order. So let's add a fit here. And we're going to scale it down maybe, I don't know, 0.5. That looks good. And then, oh, it's still much too big for the book, so let's do point, and let's kind of fix that order. There we go. The only issue is that it's still not looking right, so we have to, what I did is, when I was fixing this, is I messed with the fit, I messed with the fit parameters until it looked normal, and that meant keeping the scale uneven, because I think that's what was causing the issue. So if we manually mess with this, there, that looks much better. It's not perfect, but I settled for it. Oops. That looks alright, I'll say. And now we want to translate that, so we can move that bit to the left a bit more, and we have ourselves in our little scrapbook. That's great. And now I need to show you how to make a peelable sticker. So what I did for that is essentially so to make a peelable sticker, what you basically need is another piece of geometry on top of the current book, because if it's part of our current geo, it's going to move with it, and we want it to be moving separately. So for that, what we will do is we will first make a grid similar to this. I'm imagining this sticker is a square. You can customize the sticker shape using trace. I have not explored it yet, but I'm looking forward to. So we're going to start with another grid. And next we're going to so we're going to do that by beginning with a grid. So we're going to make that new extra piece of geometry by beginning with another grid, similar to how we made the pages, but just imagine a smaller bendable page that's like a sticky note on top of the bigger pages. So and we would want the size of this to be much smaller than our pages, so it looks like a sticker. So I'm just going to scale that down. I would say that looks good. And then so to make that additional piece of geometry, we're going to start with another grid. Just imagine it like another smaller liftable page on top of the bigger liftable pages. That makes it seem like a sticker, and because it's smaller, we're going to definitely size this down. It still might be too big, but we can adjust it later. And then we're going to add a transform for similar reasons of the axes we talked about before. So it will bend off of this side, and I'm going to shut off the viewer, and then we're going to add a twist. Once again, change your operation to bend, and your axis should be flipped. Oh, wait. Yep, do you see how it's flipping? That's the peelable sticker I want. And then we're going to connect it to actually another transform, because I wanted to tilt it for purpose of it looking random and haphazard. You don't have to do this. So we're gonna put the transform to, let's say, 45. Oh, transform to 45, and that's tilted. That's looking good. And now, because the problem I ran into, as I said earlier, was that there are only two gestures, that only two hands, so two gestures at a time. So I could not figure out a way to map a third gesture onto this to make the sticker peelable. But what I ended up doing is using a constant and a math chop, and then you can use the constant slider to manipulate how this peels off. So we're gonna add a constant here. And then we're gonna map the constant, and then we're gonna map that constant onto our twist feature, similar to how we did it for the other pages. Just this time there's no MediaPipe. So, and we're gonna map it onto strength again. And so now when we move our constant slider, which is this, it's moving, but it's moving ever so slightly. That's the issue here. And the reason that's happening is because our range is too small, so it doesn't extend far enough. But the problem is, the only way I could think about fixing this was actually a very absurd way, because like I said, it's a zero constant is also a 0 to 1 range, so it's not something that expands, and peeling is like something that requires a larger range. So what I did is I connected it to the math chop, but the range that I changed it to, I don't think this is recommended, but this was the only way it worked in my head. I changed it to -100, and we're gonna have to remap this onto the twist. So you put it in active mode, and then you map it on the twist, on the strength. So now you see that it properly peels off. There you go. And so we can now merge this into our book, or we can treat it as a separate geo, which I wanted to do because I can then edit it as a separate sticker. So I would recommend treating this as a separate geo. So we're just gonna add a geo to it from here, and it automatically will get rendered onto the thing. And then if you see it being hidden, you just have to increase its Z value, and then it'll show up. And now when I peel this, oh dear God, I'm gonna just bring it here for ease. And now when I'm adjusting my constant, the sticker is peeling, so some form of interactivity with the sticker still remains. So there you have it, your almost complete interactive scrapbook. So this was the toughest part of creating the scrapbook, which was coming up with the book concept and the peelable sticker and the video, and integrating the feedback drawing on top of it and positioning it. So I focused on those 4 things for the concept of this tutorial. However, the remaining decorations that actually made it more visually appealing were not that difficult. They were just mostly tops that were transformed, rotated with some noise animation to make it more fun, as well as some movie file ins, which were PNGs of stickers. And I again used lots of transforms to decorate them all over the page. And if I'm thinking about next steps, I would like to really add sound to this scrapbook. So when you're like flipping the page, there's a noise that comes that sounds like a page turning, or if you're peeling the sticker, like some sort of noise comes. Maybe if the book could tear, I think integrating audio into this would be really interesting. Or it doesn't even have to sound like physical media, but any sort of audio when you do the interactions. And adding more decorations. So I am hopefully going to continue exploring this concept of an interactive scrapbook through TouchDesigner, because it's a really interesting way to frame physical media from like a new technological lens, and seeing how the two merge and look on a screen, but it still feels like a book. So yeah, thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. If you did, thumbs up below. What do you guys say? I don't know. Yeah, like and subscribe, leave a comment, share. I don't know what YouTube has. And yeah, okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Goodbye.